In the silent theater of human ambition, where the spotlights of charisma and the grand proclamations of self-assurance often claim the final bow, there exists a far more profound performance unfolding in the wings. It is a performance not of noise, but of profound stillness, not of reaction, but of immutable cause. To speak of confidence, truly, is to venture beyond the well-trodden paths of popular psychology, beyond the affirmations spoken to mirrors and the postures meant to convince the world. We are embarking, instead, on a journey into a deeper stratum of power, one illuminated not by the fleeting flare of fireworks but by the cold, constant, and majestic light of a distant star. This is an exploration of the most powerful trait of the truly confident, a quality so fundamental that it has been misunderstood, maligned, and cloaked in infamy for centuries, its essence captured and distorted in the name of a Florentine thinker, Machiavelli. Yet, the trait we speak of is not the cunning of the fox, nor the brutality of the lion, but something far more potent and architecturally sound, virtue. Imagine, if you will, two distinct landscapes. The first is a bustling, sun-drenched city square, filled with the clamor of voices, the confident handshakes, the easy laughter that echoes from the walls. This is the kingdom of surface-level confidence, a territory governed by the approval of others, built upon the shifting sands of external validation. It is impressive, certainly, and it can command attention for a time. But it is a structure without a foundation, a magnificent facade that trembles with the first tremor of dissent or the cold wind of failure. Now, journey inward, beyond the city walls, into a secluded, ancient grove. Here, the air is still. A single, ancient obelisk stands at its center, carved from a single block of granite. It does not seek the sun's attention. It merely is. It is unmoved by the storms that rage, not out of defiance, but out of a nature so integral to itself that the weather is merely a passing phenomenon, irrelevant to its core existence. This obelisk is the manifestation of virtue, the unshakable, self-defining power that is the true engine of Machiavellian confidence. This is not the confidence that asks, "Do they like me?" but the power that states, "This is what I am, and this is the reality I will enact." It is a shift from being a character in a play written by others to becoming the playwright of one's own destiny, the architect of one's own fortune. The common perception, the caricature drawn from the prince, is one of a moral manipulation, a gospel of ends justifying means. But this is to mistake the surgeon's scalpel for the murderer's knife. The tool is the same, but the consciousness wielding it is entirely different. The foundational confidence we speak of is born from a ruthless understanding of the world as it is, not as we wish it to be. It is the courage to gaze into the chasm of fortuna, the chaotic, unpredictable river of chance, circumstance, and luck, and not to plead with it, but to build dams and canals to channel its raw, untamable power toward one's own ends. To be truly confident, in this Machiavellian sense, is to possess a sovereignty of the self so complete that the opinions of others become like data points in a foreign language, interesting, perhaps, but ultimately incapable of dictating internal policy. It is the trait that allows an individual to stand alone, not in lonely isolation, but in the potent solitude of a sovereign state. They are a system unto themselves, governed by their own laws, driven by their own virtue, which is the amalgamation of will, wisdom, flexibility, and relentless force of action. This is the confidence of a Caesar crossing the Rubicon, of an Elizabeth I steering her nation through religious turmoil, of any individual who looks at the map of their life and decides to redraw the borders, not based on the treaties of societal expectation, but on the topography of their own indomitable will. It is, at its heart, a creative act, the ultimate act of defining oneself against the entropy of the cosmos. We are not merely discovering confidence. We are, in a very real sense, forging it in the private smithy of our own soul, with virtue as our hammer and the anvil of reality. This is the hidden architecture of a power that does not wax and wane, but simply, irrevocably, is. This sovereign power, this virtue, does not announce itself with fanfare. It operates in the quiet calculus of cause and effect, a deep and resonant force that is felt more than it is heard. To understand its core themes is to map the hidden currents that move beneath the still surface of a deep ocean. For this confidence is not an emotion but a state of being, an alignment with the fundamental mechanics of power and reality itself. The first and most profound pillar upon which it rests is the unflinching embrace of verita effettuale, the effectual truth. This is the courage to discard the comforting map of how the world should be and to navigate instead by the stark, often unforgiving, terrain of how it actually is. Most human anxiety and insecurity stem from the chasm between expectation and reality, from the desperate desire for the world to conform to our personal fiction of fairness, kindness, and predictable rewards. The individual of virtue closes this chasm not by changing the world in a day, but by first accepting its raw, unvarnished texture. They see the self-interest in the philanthropist's smile, the latent power in the quiet subordinate, the fragility in the seemingly solid institution. This is not cynicism, but clarity, the same clarity a sailor possesses when he respects the sea not as a friend or an enemy, but as a powerful, a moral force whose laws must be understood and obeyed to be harnessed. This acceptance is the bedrock, the solid granite upon which all else is built, for a foundation cannot be laid upon the shifting sands of wishful thinking. From this clear-eyed perception flows the second core theme, the dynamic interplay between form and substance, between the illusory and the real. Machiavelli's famous dictum that it is better for a prince to be feared than loved, if he cannot be both, is often cited as a proof of his cruelty, yet it is, in fact, a profound commentary on the nature of human perception and the substrates of lasting power. Love is a fickle substance, dependent on the goodwill and ever-changing emotions of others. Fear, in his context, is a more reliable currency, rooted in the consistent and predictable understanding of consequences. The truly confident individual understands that the world responds not only to what we are, but to the projection of what we appear to be. This is the mastery of semiotics, the art and science of signs. Their confidence is not a mask they wear, but a fortress they inhabit, and they are meticulously aware of its gates, its walls, and the banners that fly from its towers. Every action, every word, every silence is a calculated piece of communication designed to build a perception of unassailable capability and resolve. They know that to be powerful, one must also seem powerful, for perception often crystallizes into reality, attracting allies and deterring challenges long before a direct test of strength is necessary. This is the strategic cultivation of an aura, a personal mythology that becomes a tangible asset in the theater of human affairs. Yet, this projection would be a hollow shell without the third theme, which is the relentless, almost alchemical, fusion of flexibility and immovable will. Virtue is often mistakenly seen as rigid, masculine force, but its true genius lies in its fluidity. It is the confidence of the bamboo that bends in the hurricane while the mighty oak splinters. It is the wisdom of the water that flows around the rock, wearing it down over centuries without ever ceasing its movement. The individual of true confidence possesses an inner core of purpose, a final objective that is as fixed as the North Star, but their methods, their tactics, their outward form are endlessly adaptable. They understand that Fortuna is a raging river, and they do not waste their strength trying to stand still against its current. Instead, they read the water, they shift their weight, they use the very force that would drown a less perceptive person to propel themselves forward. This is the essence of pragmatic action over principled paralysis. They are not bound by a rigid identity of this is how I do things, but are guided by the higher principle of this is what must be achieved. This fluid strength allows them to retreat without feeling defeated, to change alliances without feeling treacherous, and to abandon a failing course without a crisis of self, for their identity is not tied to their transient strategies, but to their enduring, sovereign purpose. Ultimately, these themes converge into a single, overarching concept: the transition from being an object acted upon by the world to becoming the subject who acts upon it. This is the final and most liberating core of Machiavellian confidence. The common man lives as a leaf in the wind, blaming the wind for his trajectory. The individual of virtue understands that while he cannot control the wind, he can learn its patterns, he can build a sail, and he can chart a course. His confidence is the product of this agency. It is the deep, internal knowledge that he is the primary causal agent in his own life's narrative. He does not wait for permission, for the perfect moment, or for external validation. He assesses the landscape of reality with cold clarity, projects an aura of unshakable capability, and moves with a fluid grace toward his objective, adapting to every twist of fate without ever losing sight of his destination. His confidence, therefore, is not a static quality he possesses, but a dynamic and continuous process of creation, a perpetual state of self-governance in a universe that offers no guarantees, only opportunities for the disciplined, the perceptive, and the brave. To grasp the profound, almost alchemical nature of this confidence, we must descend from the realm of abstract themes into the cavern of symbolic narratives, where truth is refracted through the prism of story, revealing its hidden facets in a more visceral light. Consider, then, the ancient tale of the sculptor and the uncarved block. In a city of brilliant artisans, one sculptor was renowned not for the speed of his work, nor for the ornate detail of his creations, but for their unnerving, timeless power. While others rushed to their marble with hammers and chisels, filled with ambitious designs, this master would sit for days, sometimes weeks, in silence before the raw, uncarved stone. He was not idle. He was engaged in a silent dialogue, not with the block as it was, but with the form trapped within it, the form only he could perceive. His confidence did not reside in his ability to impose his will upon the stone, but in his profound patience to discover the will of the stone itself, to understand its grain, its hidden fractures, its essential nature. The act of carving, when it finally began, was not a violent subjugation, but a collaborative liberation. This is the essence of virtue in its deepest symbolic form. It is not the arrogance of creation from nothing, but the humble yet supreme confidence of co-creation with reality. The truly confident individual does not rage against the limitations of their circumstances, their personality, or their starting point, the raw block of their life. They commune with it. They learn its secrets, its strengths, and its weaknesses, and they work with them, not against them, to reveal the potent form that was always waiting within the raw material of existence. Another narrative, drawn from a more celestial mythology, is the allegory of the two navigators. The first navigator is a master of the chart. He knows the mapped sea lanes, the friendly ports, the predictable trade winds. His confidence is absolute, so long as his journey remains within the bounds of his elaborate, pre-drawn maps. But when a storm of unprecedented fury, a manifestation of fortuna, shatters his vessel and casts him adrift in an unknown, starless ocean, his confidence shatters with his mast. He is helpless, for his power was extrinsic, borrowed from the maps, and not intrinsic to his own being. The second navigator is different. He, too, knows the charts, but he has spent a lifetime studying deeper arts. The subtle swell of the waves, the migration patterns of birds, the secret language of the stars veiled by the storm clouds. His confidence is not in the map, but in his own cultivated ability to read the world directly. Adrift in the same chaos, he does not despair. He tastes the salt on the air, feels the pull of hidden currents, and senses a distant landfall in the behavior of the sea itself. His confidence is unshaken because it is built on a dialogue with the fundamental principles of the cosmos, not on the fragile, human-made representations of it. The truly confident individual is this second navigator. Their virtue is this deep, internal gyroscope, calibrated not to the shifting opinions of men or the temporary safety of known ports, but to the eternal, if often hidden, laws of nature and power. Perhaps the most potent of these symbolic narratives is the parable of the citadel and the meadow. Common confidence is like a splendid, fortified citadel built on a plain. Its walls are high, its gates are strong, and it projects an image of immense strength. Yet, this very strength is its vulnerability. It is a fixed point. An enemy can lay siege to it. Its walls can be bombarded. Its stores can be depleted. Its confidence is defensive, brittle, and dependent on the integrity of its static defenses. The confidence of virtue, however, is like a vast, trackless meadow that slopes up into a forested, mountainous range. There are no walls to besiege, no central gate to storm. An adversary entering the meadow finds no single point to attack. The defender is mobile, fluid, and everywhere at once. They know every hidden spring, every treacherous ravine, every sheltered grove. They can strike from the mist and vanish into the earth. Their power is not concentrated in a single, vulnerable structure, but is distributed across the entire terrain of their being. This symbolizes the holistic, integrated nature of true confidence. It is not a single trait like courage or intelligence, but an ecosystem of capabilities, psychological resilience, strategic acumen, emotional discipline, physical vitality, that cannot be defeated by attacking any one front. The individual of virtue offers no single point of leverage for fortune or their enemies to exploit. Their strength is in their adaptive, pervasive, and terrain-aware existence, making them impossible to pin down and therefore impossible to truly defeat. These narratives, the sculptor, the navigator, the living landscape, all point toward a single, transformative realization. The most powerful confidence is not something you have, but something you are. It is not an ornament worn on the surface of the personality, but the very bedrock upon which the personality is built. It is a shift from a philosophy of possession to a philosophy of essence. The citadel possesses strong walls, but the meadow is strong in its boundless, adaptable presence. The first navigator possesses accurate maps, but the second is a master of navigation, a living instrument of perception. This is the deeper symbolic truth that Machiavelli's virtue points toward, a state of being so aligned with the strategic realities of existence that action becomes not a matter of anxious choice, but a natural, flowing expression of one's core nature in response to the world as it is. It is the ultimate integration of the self with the often hidden architecture of power, fortune, and reality itself. To speak of sculptors and navigators, of citadels and meadows, is to paint a grand tapestry on a cosmic scale, but the true test of any profound philosophy is its translation into the granular texture of a single human life, the quiet moments of decision in a sunlit office or the private reckonings in the dark of night. The integration of this Machiavellian confidence is not an event marked by a trumpet's blast, but a slow, deliberate process of recalibration, a rewiring of one's very perception and response to the world. It begins, as all true things do, with the internal, with the cultivation of what can only be called a sovereign inner court. Imagine your mind as a throne room. For most, it is a chaotic place, filled with the shouting voices of past grievances, the frantic petitions of future anxieties, and the fickle cheers or boos of an imagined audience. The first practical act of integration is to silence this mob. This is the discipline of verita effettuale applied inwardly, to see your own thoughts, emotions, and impulses not as commands from a king, but as data points, subjects vying for attention. You, the sovereign, must learn to observe them with cold clarity, to dismiss the hysterical courtier of fear and to heed the calm, strategic counsel of reason and long-term interest. This daily practice of internal governance, of refusing to be tyrannized by your own transient emotional states, is the foundational drill that builds the unassailable core. It is the quiet work of becoming the sculptor who understands his own stone, the navigator who can read the storm within his own heart. From this fortified inner citadel, the practice then extends outward into the realm of action, which is governed by the principle of strategic perception. The individual cultivating virtue learns to treat every social and professional interaction as a subtle performance on a stage where perception is a tangible currency. This is not about deception, but about the masterful management of signals. It is the understanding that to grant your time, attention, and emotional reactions indiscriminately is to devalue your own currency. Therefore, practical integration might manifest as the conscious cultivation of a measured silence, where others are left to interpret your stillness as depth rather than being handed the cheap coin of a hasty opinion. It is the practice of making your movements deliberate, your speech consequential, and your commitments ironclad. In a world addicted to oversharing, the person of virtue understands that mystery is a fortress wall and that a reputation built slowly, brick by brick through consistent, effective action, is far stronger than one erected overnight with the loud but flimsy materials of self-promotion. They become the living embodiment of their own propaganda, not by lying, but by ensuring that their public actions are so aligned with their capable private nature that no gap exists for doubt to seep through. This leads to the most critical real-world implication. the reorientation of one's relationship with failure and fortune. The common soul sees failure as a verdict, a permanent stain on their record written by a hostile universe. The individual of integrated virtue sees it as the navigator sees the storm, not as a personal affront, but as a phenomenon to be analyzed, learned from, and used. A failed business venture is not a symbol of their inadequacy, but a costly yet invaluable map of a reef to be avoided in the future. A broken relationship is not a tragedy of the heart, but a masterclass in human nature and the limits of certain alliances. This pragmatic, almost surgical, detachment from the emotional weight of outcomes allows for a fluidity that appears superhuman to those who are brittle. They can retreat from a position without it being a humiliation, because their identity is not tied to holding that particular hill, but to winning the overall campaign. They can absorb the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, not with the Stoic's grim resignation, but with the strategist's keen interest, asking only, what does this reveal? How can this be used? This is the application of the Meadows principle. By offering no rigid identity to attack, failure and fortune alike lose their power to break them, becoming instead mere weather patterns that pass over their boundless, adaptable terrain. Ultimately, the practical integration of this trait culminates in the most empowering realization of all. You become the primary cause in your own life. You stop waiting for the perfect conditions, the benevolent mentor, the societal approval. You understand that the raw material you have been given, your talents, your flaws, your starting point, is your uncarved block, and the chisel is in your hand. The world of Fortuna is not your opponent but your medium. The real-world implication is a life of relentless, quiet agency. It is the confidence to make the unpopular decision because it is correct, to endure the temporary disapproval of the crowd for the sake of a long-term design, and to stand alone in the conviction of your own assessment. This is not the loud, chest-thumping confidence of the braggart, but the quiet, tectonic certainty of a continental plate shifting. It is a confidence that manifests not in what you say, but in the spaces between your words, in the calm of your gaze, and in the unshakable consistency of your actions, building a reality around you not through force, but through the immutable laws of cause and effect that you have learned to wield as your own. We have journeyed now from the abstract to the symbolic, and from the symbolic to the practical, tracing the contours of a power that is less a personality trait and more a fundamental orientation to existence itself. This exploration of what we have called, for the sake of a name, the Machiavellian confidence, culminates not in a list of tactics to be memorized, but in a single, transformative invitation to undertake the perpetual and sovereign act of self-creation. The grand tapestry we have woven, thread by philosophical thread, reveals that the most powerful trait of the truly confident is not something one finds, but something one forges in the silent, private furnace of the will, a process of aligning one's very essence with the unyielding architecture of reality. This is the ultimate conclusion, the final synthesis of our journey, that true confidence is the conscious, deliberate state of being the primary cause in your own narrative, the sculptor of your own destiny, the unassailable meadow that incorporates all weather into its strength. This is not a call to arms in the conventional sense, but a call to architecture. It is an invitation to stop seeing yourself as a character buffeted by the plot of your life and to begin the arduous, glorious work of becoming its author. The transformational call is to build your citadel not on the plains of popular opinion, but within the boundless, strategic highlands of your own potential, to become a sovereign state in the world of men, governed by your own laws of reason, purpose, and effectual truth. This requires a ruthless audit of the self, a quiet dismissal of the internal courtiers of doubt and the external petitioners for your validation. It demands the courage to put away the comforting, but ultimately useless, maps of how life should be and to instead learn to navigate by the cold, clear stars of how it is. This is the core of the transformation, a shift from a life of reaction to a life of creation, from being an effect in the world to becoming its cause. Let this be the quiet revolution you undertake from this moment forward. Let the knowledge that your confidence can be an unassailable, internal virtue, a fusion of clear-eyed perception, strategic adaptability, and immovable purpose, settle into your bones until it becomes the very rhythm of your pulse. Do not seek to be confident for the applause of an audience you will one day leave behind. Forge a confidence that is its own reward, a state of being that needs no external witness to validate its existence. See every challenge, every stroke of fortune, every failure and success, not as verdicts on your worth, but as the raw material of your uncarved block, the winds and currents of your personal ocean. Your power lies not in controlling the storm, but in building a vessel of such integrity and a navigational skill of such precision that no storm can ultimately prevent you from reaching a shore of your own choosing. This is the final, graceful, and formidable call, to stop searching for confidence as if it were a lost object, and to instead begin emanating it as the natural consequence of a life lived in deliberate, sovereign, and unbroken dialogue with the deepest currents of reality. The block of marble is before you. The chisel is in your hand. The form within awaits only your courage to set it free.